afternoon, everybody. This is Robin Ayoub from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another episode. Today, we are recording, I think, episode 195. I want to thank the audience for being with me along the journey. We were just talking earlier about this with my guest, Spencer Delisle. Spencer joins me from Quebec, and I'm very excited to be talking to a fellow Canadian. He has an office in Quebec, but he is in Oakville, practically my neighbor, and I am in Mississauga. So, Spencer, welcome to the channel. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Robin, and just listening to your podcast, hearing the incredible stories that you're able to tease out of your guests, and just hearing a little bit about your own story. I really feel you should express it more often. It's a fascinating story, maybe not too many people know about.
Yeah, not many people know about this one. And we were just talking about that, where I tell my story over a podcast. A gentleman I met, Chris Adams, he's originally from Australia, but he moved to Bahrain, and he opened an agency, a marketing agency specialized in the legal market and legal sector. And he did a podcast with me where the first time I actually went through the details of what I went through when I was a kid and how I got here. And me remembering this, it sort of put me in a state of mind where our conversation today, hopefully, it will take us to understand how people go through life journey and not equipped to deal with what life, is going to throw at them. And then at some point, somewhere, life teaches them a lesson or two, and they learn it the hard way. The hindsight is 20/20, as they say, right? So looking back would say, well, I've dealt with it. It's okay. But would have been better to deal with these life lessons if I was equipped to better handle it. So as we say on this channel, let's get started with this, Spencer. Everybody's got a story. What's your story?
Right. Well, it all started back in Montreal, that faithful day in 1977 when I came to this earth. Yeah, it was an interesting start because it was kind of around the time of, the kind of Quebec sovereigns movement and the starting of all that, and the kidnapping of Laporte and that whole thing that went down in Quebec, where it turned out that my dad was principally Anglophone. I mean, he also spoke French, but it was that kind of mass exodus of the Anglophones from the province. Of course, we love Quebec, and much of my family is there now in Montreal and the surrounding regions. We love to speak French as well. We love our French culture, but we ended up moving outside of the province to Calgary, and then after being on the West Coast, coming back here, I always had a real curiosity for life, I would say, and that got me very interested in spirituality. I was lucky enough growing up in Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver and Calgary to be surrounded by a real host of multicultural friends and learn so much from their different cultures and religions and faiths and their practices as well. But it was interesting because later on in my life, I got to a point where my career goals were not giving me the joy they used to in the past. That next promotion and that next level of seniority, it didn't do it for me anymore. And suddenly my life became very dry, like someone had just sucked the juice out of it. And I just felt like I was on this merry-go-round and doing the same things every day. And it didn't feel very purposeful or meaningful. And so it got me asking those bigger questions, who am I? What is this life? Why am I here? And those questions, it got me searching a lot of different paths, looking into different techniques, different practices, and which eventually I ended up going back to school because I couldn't figure out a good answer to see how to manage my mind and all these emotions I was feeling. So I went back to school, and in that journey, I saw a poster that said free meditation from the Art of Living Club. So I thought, okay, I'm a student. It's the right price. I'm interested in meditation. So let's give it a shot. And I experienced this guided meditation through a CD from the founder of the Art of Living, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, a master of meditation from India, yoga and meditation. And it was incredible. I had this taste of this beautiful peace and serenity. And then I took the Art of Living Part 1 course, eventually became a teacher. And then I left my job in the laboratory as a biochemist, working in nutritional biochemistry at McGill. For the past 20 odd years. I've been teaching these programs around the world. And not only have they, changed me, tens of thousands of people have had the honor of sharing these with. And now I'm the president of the organization for Canada. We found
Yeah, I
that,
saw that.
yeah, that's it. Even though we're in 186 countries, we've got 40,000 teachers, we've got over 800 million people have done the programs or attended the events. We're not so well known in Canada, so we want to get out there, and it's thanks to you that we're able to connect with some new audiences and kind of give them an idea of maybe another tool they could add to their toolbox.
Well, you know what? I hope this podcast or this blog, by the time we turn it into a blog podcast and a few videos, help you and spread the word and try to get to, resonate with so many people out there that they need this. Because you look on, the only way we can connect with humanity nowadays is through social media. And you look on social media nowadays
Yeah.
and you see how much we need this. Just from the negativity that you see out there, people have formed a bubble and they live in it, and that bubble sometimes is not healthy. Sometimes it is,
Yeah.
but sometimes it isn't. Exposing people to what's better. Hopefully, this podcast will help a little bit. Now, you also vice president and board member of TLEX. Can you explain what TLEX is as well?
For sure. Yeah. So we have different foundations, kind of sister organizations, so to speak. So Art of Living Foundation is for the general public. TLEX Institute which is Transformational Leadership for Excellence. That's our organization that's for corporate programming. So all of the programs that we do in corporations having to do with managing stress, improving teamwork, increasing focus and efficiency, really, if you think about it, they say that, you got your job with your resume, but you keep your job based on the soft skills that you have. But if you think about it, how many years have we been working to develop our resume? Years and years. You go through all your levels of schooling into university, all the professional training. And then in the end, your leadership and level of seniority in the company and your level of decision making is determined not by those skills, but on the level of soft skills that you have. Your ability to lead, your ability to manage your own emotions and inspire others. So really that is the school that we teach. We teach people how to, develop self-mastery so they can manage themselves. And then when you've developed that self-mastery within yourself, then, only a lit candle can light other candles. You become a beacon of that for your teams. And from that, seeing how we can connect and collaborate in a more deeper and authentic way. And then from that, comes very inspired, purposeful work. So yeah, we're really, for the past 20 years, we've been working all over the world. We're working in about 60 countries with the corporate program. I've had over 500,000 people we've done these trainings with. And yeah, it's incredible, to be able to connect with people in a domain that maybe, you wouldn't think of talking about these things and learning about these things, but it's now companies are obviously seeing the value, and yeah, we're really happy to connect with them.
So you're also involved with the International Association for Human Value, ahv.ca, I guess that's their website.
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about that? You seem to be very involved. I'm so happy to be connected with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So the International Association for Human Values, you could say, is our institutional programs that we do. So we do programs with police and first responders. There's an epidemic of stress and trauma.
I can imagine their jobs are very stressful.
Exactly. So, and that's the difficult thing, right? Like, we have a difficult experience at work, and then, we might be able to, take a break or be able to take a sick leave or something like that. But often these officers, it's day after day, call after call, crisis after crisis. And, you get, into this very difficult emotional situation, and they might, be in fight or flight on the first call. And then all of a sudden they've got to come to the next call. And we're human beings, we can't just shut these things off at the flip of a switch. So obviously that can carry in to the next call. And that's where we can get all kinds of, problems and issues. But what we've noticed is that with first responders that practice these techniques as a team or individually, they come into the next call with a clean slate. So that's obviously better for them and their mental health and their sustainability, but it's also great for the general public as well, because then the general public, is will have a much more settled, calm, centered first responder that's coming to aid them in this, crisis situation. So that's one side of what we do. We also work with military and veterans come back after the war and in preparation for their military activities. And then we also work with high schools, elementary schools, universities, students, and also the health sector with physicians as well.
Now, I've had people on the channel here with volunteer organizations, and two of them, in fact, and there are a for-profit business model for these volunteering-based organizations. How does it work for the Art of Living? Is that volunteer-based? Is it for-profit? Or is there specific programs that you're marketing, that you're trying to get people to get on board with? How does that work, if you don't mind?
Right, for sure. So the Art of Living, we're a registered charity in Canada. So we're a not-for-profit. Basically, all our resources go back into the goal, which is to create a stress-free, violence-free world. So got our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
You got a little bit of work to do, yeah.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. So that's with the International Association for Human Values and Art of Living. Yeah, we're both not-for-profit charities. So that's the way we work.
And so I just have one more question on what got you here kind of thing, because this is pretty interesting. I was reading that you worked for Novartis before in the marketing, the marketing division.
That's right. Sales and marketing. Yeah.
Most people go into these positions that never go out. You left. How did you do that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that over the years, I've realized that there's not just one way to solve a problem. And I mean, I feel fortunate to have had experience in, pharma and healthcare on both sides, you could say, like on the sales and marketing side, and then also on the laboratory side, the research, and development side. And I started, but from the research I was doing, I was also observing that there's many, you could say, natural alternatives that are very powerful for resolving or helping in the resolution of some, disease states. So, got me really interested in learning more. And I think to a certain extent as well, I was at a point in my life where, I was kind of in a routine, and I needed to break that routine in order to discover some of these incredible tools that I've now learned, and now actually is the main focus of my life, is to share these tools with other people. Not to say that, if you want to learn these tools, that you have to quit your job and go on a totally different path. No, not at all. I mean, these tools are really tools that you can just incorporate into your life to help your life be better. They only take a few minutes a day, and they can make a really big difference in terms of your state of mind and your emotional well-being.
One of the things I was really impressed as I was doing my research about you, Spencer, and your organization is, did I understand this correctly? You brought these programs into organizations like Google, Deloitte, TD Bank, FIFA, and even the government of Iraq and the European Parliament. What does a sales pitch in this environment look like? And how do you get hard-nosed CFOs or government ministry bureaucracy, I guess, to say yes to meditation?
Yeah, well, I think in the
congratulations, by the way. I wouldn't know. I don't know how you did it, but congratulations.
I think, the climate has changed over the years. If you would have talked about, these types of practices, maybe 40 years ago or 30 years ago, or even 20 years ago, in some instances, people wouldn't have been as open-minded. But now there is just a whole host of research that demonstrates the effectiveness of the states that meditation, breath work, all of these things can help you achieve. And I mean, in the end, what is our greatest resource? Is it the inventory that we have in the factory? Is it the price that we can get, for our exchange of labor and work, or service and work? Oh, sure, those things all play a part, but what is the real value there? It's in the human capacity. And that's the thing, if someone's, completely shut down, or they're not operating as efficiently as they could, well, you're not going to get the output that you're looking for, out of your teams. And, now with the level that this new generation is shifting, the workplace, and what they're really demanding, from employers. Employers have been really scrambling to see, what kind of tangible benefits that they can provide in terms of the work environment and also in terms of the services available, because this new generation is very, very open to learning about how they can, better themselves and work more collaboratively as a team.
That brings a very, I guess, an observation on my side, which is probably going on in the people's mind who are listening to this podcast. So, if you were an employer and you were faced with the dilemma of, I've got issues I need to fix with my staff versus replacing them, why would you fix the issues versus replace them?
Well, it's a great question. And the obvious answer is, obviously, it costs a lot to get someone up to speed and to train someone. So, you've got to start at zero again with someone. They've got to learn, all the company culture. They've got to learn, get up to speed on all the work that's been done, how it's been done, and then all the training that goes into that role. So that's a massive expenditure. And, I think what we've seen is that it doesn't really create, that, purposeful culture that a lot of people are looking for in a workplace. And there's something to be said about someone that believes in you enough to train you and to invest in you. And the type of loyalty and the type of inspirational work that you can draw from someone like that is just incredibly far beyond anything that you could, find on a resume. That investment in your people is something that in one way is very tangible because we can measure the productivity from it. But in other ways, in those moments, those crucial moments that matter where you need that loyalty, that is something that, can't be bought or hired. That is something that needs to be built with trust. And Stephen Covey, I love his books, and he has this expression from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People I really love, where he says relationships move at the speed of trust. And I think you could say that about business. Business moves at the speed of trust, and trust takes time to build. And if you can invest in someone, in their own state of mind, then, these are tools that neither at home nor at school have we learned how to manage our mind and emotions. You get upset at the dinner table when you were a kid. What did your mom or dad tell you? Well, don't come down until you're in a better mood, or, push that emotion down. I don't want to see it, behave properly. And
put the genie back in the bottle.
That's it, exactly. Put that genie back in the bottle, stuff it down. And what does the research tell us about emotional suppression? Well, it's like shaking a can of Coke and throwing it up in the air. It's like,
with Mentos or with no Mentos?
Yeah. Extra Mentos. Oh my God. Like, we know that is a recipe for disaster. In one of the workshops, we talk about, the 3 A's for managing, emotions, this awareness, acceptance, and action.
Mm-hmm.
And typically we live in a very distracted society. Our own lives, we're pulled in a million different directions. And we're not aware of how we're feeling or what emotions that just come up. We just express them. And I remember I had a boss that he was a brilliant scientist, but his method of communication was screaming.
That's a boss you want to have.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. So, but he was brilliant. So obviously we all wanted to work with him, but that awareness of the emotion was just completely not there, stuck in the amygdala, incredibly brilliant intellectually, quite immature emotionally, emotional regulation. And like it or not, you can go alone, or we can go together, and it's so much more powerful together. So, being able to be aware of that emotion is the first step. The second step is acceptance. So being able to accept that, okay, I'm feeling angry in this moment. So I've told someone, time and time again, the way that we'd like it to be done, and they keep doing it the other way. So obviously frustration is going to come up. You can get angry. It's normal. But, if we can accept rather than reacting from an angry, frustrated mind, what happens with acceptance and attention? Up, the mind just settles down by just simply saying, okay, well, I'm feeling this emotion. I'm a human being. I'm going to give myself permission to feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
angry or anxious or whatever it is. In any case, this is what's happening, whether I like it or not. Who likes to be angry? I don't know
Nobody.
anybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
nobody. Who likes
nobody.
to be anxious? Same thing. So obviously it takes a little bit of courage to be able to be present with that and just be with that storm of emotions, so to speak. But the incredible aspect of that is that when you are present with that storm settles down, and from a calm, settled, centered mind, you can respond instead of reacting. And that is the value there. And I mean, I think, over the past 20 odd years, we've seen so many organizations transform, by being able to, learn some of these, laws of the mind, some of this wisdom, and then even beyond the awareness, acceptance, and action, being able to take rational, intelligent, intuitive action after your mind settles down. The techniques with the breath and the meditation are very powerful because you don't even have to use any of what I just shared. Eventually, with time and practice of these techniques, your system automatically becomes more regulated, and your baseline level of stress is lower. So instead of reacting and being out of control up here, well, then maybe regularly you've regulated yourself, so you're much down here, and maybe in a crisis you go up here, which is much more manageable.
Absolutely. Now, you come from the research background. Have you done any research on this, or have you tested the idea? What's happening in the brain at that time? What's the measurables there?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're going right up my alley here, Robin. This is my cup of
I
tea.
know that.
That's
I read
right.
that you're
Yeah.
a researcher. I thought I got to get this.
Yeah, that's it. So, Art of Living Foundation, we have over 100 plus peer-reviewed studies on the techniques we teach. One of the primary techniques we teach is called Sudarshan Kriya, or sky breath meditation. Su means proper in Sanskrit. Darshan means vision, and Kriya is a purifying action. And the idea is that through doing this breathing technique, not only do I get a clearer vision of the way things are in front of me, because I'm releasing the stress and the little traumas and the negative impressions from my memory that's clouding my vision of the present, but it gives you an opportunity to also see the essence of yourself, which is peace, which is joy, which is love, which is enthusiasm. A little baby doesn't need a reason to smile. But as we get older, man, crack a smile from a teenager, good luck, or an adult, even
I
worse.
know.
So going to the research aspect, yeah, the very interesting thing about these techniques is that typically, if you look at our nervous system, which is the play field of our mind and emotions, so to speak, the autonomic nervous system is generally operating on its own, pretty much independently. And we don't have so much input into it, actually. But the beauty of the breath in particular is that it can have a direct impact on the autonomic nervous system. So for instance, autonomic nervous system has two parts. One of them is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of that rest and digest, being able to step back, rejuvenate the system. And especially in a crisis situation, this is extremely important to be able to activate this system.
Does it matter what
If
type of
not,
crisis, Spencer? Does it matter if it's emotional crisis or physical crisis, or does it matter?
yeah, I mean both. If we can relax and calm the system, typically if it's an emotional system, we're in a more stable, calm, centered position to make a response. And also in a physical situation as well, because typically the body and the brain nervous system, they don't differentiate between a physical stressor and a mental stressor. So you may be being, our nervous system is perfectly designed. And if you're being chased by a lion, you're going to go into fight or flight. And that's fantastic because it's going to save your life. Nowadays, we may not being chased by lions, but because of the level of stress in our life, we start seeing everything as lions. We go home, our partner's a lion. We've got little lions barking, roaring at us at home. And we become, this hyper vigilant, stressed out person.
Mm-hmm.
And it increases our aging, not only the way we look, but it actually reduces the telomere length as well. So we're losing our lifespan, and we're actually looking older with all of this stress. So the beauty is that if you've heard of it, the stress hormone is called cortisol, one of them anyway. And what happens in a crisis situation is that our, kind of seat of our intellectual brilliance, creativity is the cerebral cortex here in the front. And what happens in a crisis situation is that the cortisol level spikes, and cortisol actually interrupts the communication between the neurons in your cerebral cortex. So they cannot communicate. So what does the brain do? Well, I'm going to go back to my lizard brain, the amygdala. And I'm going to start making my decisions from there, because this wizard brain or cerebral cortex is not functioning.
So back to the primitive mode of brain kind of thing, yeah?
Exactly that. You're back to this primitive way where you're very reactionary, and you're trying to put out fires everywhere. And what happens is that when we involve some breath work, it stimulates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is one of the principal ways that we can clear out this high level of cortisol from the cerebral cortex. And when we do, what happens? That communication is returned, and we switch back into the wizard brain or the cerebral cortex, and we're able to see the forest from the trees. We're able to focus deeply as well. And we're able to have that kind of creative, intuitive insight that we wouldn't have from this confused, flustered mind. But it's a much more settled, calm mind. Almost the difference between a rushing river and a lake when you go early in the morning, right? There's not even one ripple there yet. Obviously with time and practice, the mind can become this very calm, centered, settled lake of equanimity, and at the same time have incredible energy, enthusiasm, and focus power to get things done, and also connect to that deeper level of intuition.
Now, the science of breath comes up in your work quite a bit, that phrase. And I didn't know, just for the audience, I was just reading around about this particular episode and how we're going to record it and what kind of question I'm going to throw at you. I found out that we breathe 20,000 times a day without even thinking about it. And so when we put science behind it, things tend to be a little different. And that's what you were just explaining earlier. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. And it's incredible. There's this old parable of this beggar that's sitting below this tree. And he goes his whole life begging for just the necessities, just to get by. And then this man passed away. And when he was passed away, they removed a little bit of dirt from underneath him to just, clean the area. And what did they find? They found an incredible treasure filled with gold and all kinds of treasures and jewels. So this person was sitting on this immense wealth their entire life, and they didn't know. And they went on begging for their entire life. And so this is, very like many of our own lives, so to speak. We have this incredible secrets that are within the breath, something we do every moment, but we just have never been taught how to, unveil these secrets and really be able to benefit. Because if you think about it, the breath is not just a nice to have.
We have to live.
Yeah, exactly. Where would you be without your breath? You're not going to get too far, right?
Right.
And there you go. So that's the breath is one of the essences of life. And with our racing minds, being either caught up in the future, worrying about what could be, or stuck in the past, regretting, what I had said or what I had done, our mind is constantly vacillating between the future and the past, future and the past. And this is incredibly exhausting for the nervous system. And, with that in mind, well, many people have read all those books, about being in the present and living in the present and the power of now and all these types of, readings. But the next question comes, okay, well, how?
Yeah.
How do I do it?
Yeah.
And in that sense, the breath can be a very, very, very close and powerful friend, because, can the breath be in a moment other than the present moment?
No, I don't think so. You can't breathe in the past, and you can't breathe in the future.
Yeah, can I say, okay, I breathed enough today. I'm going to take it up again on Saturday. And no, No, it's not going to work, right? So the breath is always in the present moment.
Correct.
So it is an incredible, the breath and the body are fantastic tools for bringing ourselves back to the present moment. And not only that, the breath is very much connected to our mind and emotions as well. You think about it like, how do you breathe when you're happy? Well, it's like the in-breath kind of never ends, and the out-breath is much more muted. And
You feel
when you're
levitating
sad,
almost when you're happy. You feel like you're breathing and levitating.
that's it, exactly. You feel just like levitated and expanded. It's incredible, You don't even notice it when you're happy, but when you're sad, you're not doing so well, your energy's low.
And I'm assuming physiologically you're not taking enough oxygen, your cells are not being replenished enough, and affects your health, affects disease states, all that stuff.
Yes, 100%, 100%. There's two sides to who we are as people, right? So we have a gross aspect to ourselves and we have a subtle aspect to ourselves. So I like to use this as an example. This cell phone here, what is the gross aspect of this cell phone? Well, you could say the case, the hardware.
Yeah.
So it has a gross aspect, and yeah, exactly. All of those things. And my grandfather back in the day would say, oh, well, I don't believe it. Nothing exists unless I can touch it. But he came from a different generation where that was the case. But now we know that no, there is a subtle aspect to everything in our world, including, the cell phone. So, what's the subtle aspect of this phone? Well, you could say the Wi-Fi, the signal, the software. Can you touch the software? I mean, I'll be very impressed if you can. This is all part of the subtle aspect of the phone. So in the same way, we have, a physical body, physical systems that work, and we also have a subtle system as well. There are many different ways that this subtle system is just described, but this subtle energetic system, in the Vedic philosophy, we call it the pranic system, pranic energy system, this flow of energy through the body. You go to other Asian modalities, they call it the qi. So this movement of energy throughout the system. And what we've noticed is that not only does breathing practices, controlled breathing practices, increase your level of oxygen, decrease the level of cortisol, help you improve your immune response. I mean, it even has an effect at the level of the DNA, and we can go into that a little bit more later. But there's also an effect on this subtle aspect of our system. So being able to increase our level of energy, being able to help us manage those very subtle emotions and states of mind that we have. This now, the more subtle side of the system is and these soft skills are becoming, just as important and sometimes more important, especially as we go up the rungs of leadership in the workplace than ever.
Now, you reminded me when you gave the story about the beggar who people found a bunch of stuff, a bunch of treasure under him when they moved the person. You reminded me, I lived in Moncton for a while, and I won't mention any names. So my father had a little tiny diner. It was, and I won't mention the name. As soon as I mention the name, people are going to know what I'm talking about. So there was this individual who was living on the street in the city. Everybody knew who that person was. And he used to come to my father's diner. My father will give him food. And then we got to know the person a little bit. Then my dad sold the diner, moved on, moved to another city. And then we found out through some of our friends in the city that this person has passed. And this person always carrying in his hand a plastic bag. They found over $200,000 in his plastic bag after the person. So sometimes these stories based on truth, and there are, I'm sure, many stories such as the one I just told you about. You just reminded me of that person. And I can still see him till today coming through the door to my father's store. These pictures will never leave my brain, to be honest with you. It's amazing. Back to what you were saying earlier. It's amazing what the human being unrealized potential is, and unlocking that unrealized potential through the means of what you're just mentioning earlier. Like, I know, for instance, you mentioned actually in some of your research about integrating recovery strategies, especially like for athletes, for people who are under a lot of duress, under a lot of even first responders, military people with PTSDs. Have you done any work with these on the research side? with these types of individuals, what does
We
the
have,
integrated recovery strategy look like?
well, just to give you a short anecdote, so we've been doing number of studies with veterans, military veterans around the world, but we've got studies in the U.S. out of Stanford, University of Wisconsin, a number of different academic institutions, and here in Canada at our own University of Toronto. There's some very interesting research happening around looking at post-traumatic stress symptoms and the use of the sky breath meditation and the effects. And we had on one of those studies, we did some work with University of Western Ontario as well at the London Health Science Centre with veterans as well. And I remember one of those participants, I won't name his name for confidentiality, but he was a veteran that told us he had not slept more than 4 hours in the past 10 years since his last deployment. So, I mean, you think about it, how would we function? How do you function when you've had 4 hours of sleep? I mean, typically not so well. From a scientific standpoint, there is only one organ in the body that doesn't cleanse itself 24 hours a day. You know which one that is?
Does it cleanse itself? I think the brain, isn't it?
Doesn't. It's the brain. Yeah. The brain does not cleanse itself like all the other organs 24 hours a day. It only cleanses itself essentially one time, which is when we sleep.
That's
now
right.
There's mounting evidence that it also cleanses itself during meditation, another reason to practice the meditation. So you can imagine, the mental fog and the toxins that are building up physically in that person's brain.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't over a few days. This is over a number of years, a decade actually.
Mm-hmm.
So he came in, his head was on a swivel. He couldn't stop shaking and moving around. And he was just saying the reason he was there is that, his family is falling apart and along with himself. Mm-hmm. So he did that Sudarshan Kriya sky breath meditation, our first session. We did it together as a group. And he went home. And the next day he came back and he was kind of tongue in cheek angry with us. And he said, "Listen, you guys are in trouble." We said, "Okay, uh-oh.
What did
happened?"
we do?
Yeah. And he said, "Because of you, I almost missed my dentist appointment this morning because I slept 10 hours.
Wow, that's a miracle.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Just like that, this Sudarshan Kriya was able to give him that release of those negative emotions and impressions and traumas from the past. And of course, it's not always a smooth ride. We say that sometimes meditation and these breathing techniques can feel joyful and pleasant and blissful, but they can also it can be difficult. You can feel anxious. You can feel angry during these techniques. Why? Because it's coming up to come out.
Correct.
And yeah, you're shaking out that rug, right? If you want to clean a dirty rug, what's the first thing that comes out?
The big stuff.
All that. Yeah, the big stuff, isn't it? All the dust and the dirt and the caked on. And I mean, you're cleaning that rug and it's like worse. You wish you never started because it's worse than before you started. But with time and patience and practice, what happens? You've got a beautiful, clean rug. And it's the same with our nervous system. By practicing these techniques, it's not always comfortable, but you end up free of those things. And this guy, like, his head wasn't on a swivel. I mean, he was still moving around and he was still pretty jittery, but it was just after the first session. And I mean, that's what we've seen with veterans and military personnel, particularly from a study, I believe it was a study from Stanford, that looked at these techniques, the effectiveness in reducing PTS. And what they found is that there was a statistically significant reduction in PTS symptoms. And not only did that symptom reduction persist, but it persisted 3, 6, and 12 months after the course. And get this, whether the participants did the daily practice daily or not. Of course, this is a practice, right? It's not a one and done.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like anything, you might say, okay, well, why do I have to do the practice, day in, day out? Well, it's, why do you have to brush your teeth every day?
It's part of the being, I guess, right?
Exactly. We talk about dental hygiene. It's really important to us these days. And what about mental hygiene? So it's the same thing, I mean, most of us are brushing our teeth, once or twice a day, I hope. Or, I hope. And it's the same with the mind. We go years without doing anything for our mind. And we wonder, you repair your car, I don't know, what is every 50,000 kilometers, you got to do the oil change? When do we do the oil change for our mind?
That's right.
It just doesn't happen. So having a practice is the ideal, few minutes a day, add it to your daily program. And the difference that you see is remarkable, not only at home and in your own life, but at work and your performance and your ability to be present, whether it be at the office or whether it be with your kids. And that's what we've seen with the veterans, a true rehabilitation. And there's actually a film about this. It's called Almost Sunrise. It's about two vets that decide to walk across the US, and they'd end up discovering this program. Actually one of them, they both did the program. One of them actually became a teacher. It's really, incredible story.
You know what? I have like 20 other questions I want to ask, but probably I won't have time to ask you here. But what I want to do is I want to talk about artificial intelligence for a minute. Why? Because my last podcast I did yesterday, I recorded a podcast with one of the top neurosurgeons in the US. He actually, and I want to thank him for doing this, Stephen Filowski. He took time out of his operation room and his operation gear, in his OR gears, and came out to do the podcast with me. And we're talking about the use of artificial intelligence in pain management. And he was telling me about a particular invention that it is being used now, where they implement a little microchip in the vertebrae fusions, and that dispense a electrical current into the nerve system where it manages pain, therefore improving quality of life from 0 to 80%, 90%. In some cases, people are not feeling any pain after that. And you can manage the whole thing on your phone now by dialing in and out how much, because it interacts with your phone. It's got a Bluetooth technology inside of it. It interacts with your phone. You can tell it, dial new programs to it, upload new programs to it if the new program becomes available, in terms of managing the level of current that you're dispensing to the nervous system. So in your world, I mean, that was fascinating. And I was just listening to this and I'm thinking, wow, where are we going with this technology? What's next? Because every day you hear something new. So how is artificial intelligence being used in your world, Spencer?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different applications, and we're using it everywhere. I think in day to day, as everyone is, in terms of, brainstorming, and in terms of even looking at how we can, run a better organization. We actually have our own applications, the Art of Living app, as well as we have a new app called the Sattva app, which is a wonderful app to kind of create some consistency in terms of your meditation practice. And I know that app is using some AI personalizations. And effectively, I think especially on our IT team, like that's where we're going in terms of our interactions online, to the point where, when you visit our website, you're not going to see the same website that I would see, based on, your web history, and based on who you are and the information that you share and what you're interested in, you're going to be shown a website that's completely different, that's been built around that. And I guess I would say that we're also interested in another type of AI revolution, which is the AI, the absolute intelligence. And we have a new institute that we've developed called the AI or the Absolute Intelligence Institute. And this institute is delving into this incredible power that is our own self, our own mind and beyond. In fact, we have a program for kids called the intuition process. And this is developing these kids' intuition and just kind of seeing how they can tap into the sixth sense, so to speak. And I mean, we've seen this in athletes all around the world, where you ask them, wow, you weren't looking in that direction and you hadn't been looking in that direction, but you passed to that person and it was right, like in hockey, right on their stick. I remember an interview with Gretzky and they were asking, how did you know he was there? He said, you weren't looking at all in that direction. So he said, I just knew. So that level of kind of extrasensory, perception is possible in all of us, but we just have not learned how to develop it. So, if you look up the Institute of Absolute Intelligence, Institute of AI.ai is our website. You can explore, some of the research that we're doing. And some of these programs that we have for children, particularly, the results are pretty incredible. I mean, principally, the results that kids get is much better focus, more confidence, an ability to feel less stressed and be more centered in difficult situations. But even beyond that, there's some pretty incredible skills that come up. Like some of the kids can read with a blindfold. Now, from my scientific background, my first question is like, how is that even
Ow.
possible?
Yeah.
Tell me the mechanism for that. And science is going to catch up, and we're doing research on all of these different abilities right now. But in the same way that we can now have a reading, with magnetic resonance imagery, MRI, something like that. In the past, it wasn't even thought of that you could look through someone's body and be able to, understand this. So we're getting to the same level of understanding with these kids, but it's pretty incredible. Seeing these kids playing video games with the blindfold on. Some of the kids are even assisting the police with missing persons and this kind of a thing. So, I mean, it definitely sounds kind of woo-woo when you say it, but to see them, actually being able to help the police and the police depending on them and then finding the culprits, the proof is kind of in the pudding. So all this to say that, we are on really the cusp of some pretty incredible discoveries with the mind and the power that we have within ourselves. And because of kids, they don't have so many concepts like we do. It's much more easy for them to learn these types of techniques. But they do have a code of conduct. They can't do it for any lottery numbers or anything like that. And I find it just fascinating. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can check out that website.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Now, like you snowboard, you surf, you play ultimate frisbee. Your bio says happiness is not a goal, it's your nature. What does that actually mean? On a Tuesday morning, let's say,
right,
when something is going sideways for you.
Yeah, that's a
I
great
want to know
question.
how you handle the sideways.
I love it, Robin. I love how you really bring it the like brass tacks, and you're making it very practical for people, and that's what we need actually. So let's put it like this: things go sideways, and you're in a bad mood, your energy's low, and I'm telling you here that your nature is peace and love and joy. Well, I'll tell you one thing: in that situation, I don't feel any of that.
That's right.
It's like I feel the opposite of all those things you just said. And if my nature is that way, then why do I not feel like that? Why do I feel terrible in this moment? Well, my answer to that would be, okay, for example, in Oakville, it's a cloudy day today. But does that mean that the sun is not shining bright on the other side? Well, of course not. The sun is still there. It's just the clouds are in the way. And the problem is that so many different emotional baggages we carry around. You have a particular situation, it affects you, you have some kind of little trauma or stress from that situation. It's like we're putting on these colored glasses every time we have an event. So you got the red glasses, and then you put the green glasses on from this event. And then you have a failed company and you got the purple glasses. And then we've got the yellow glasses from, a fight with my, partner. And then the kids are complaining and another pair of glasses. Before you know it, good luck to seeing anything.
That's right.
Your vision is so clouded with the past and all these impressions from the past. I liken it to, remember in the past where you would go and get your film developed at the Shoppers Drug Mart?
Long time ago, yes, that's right.
Yeah. And it usually would take 7 days, but if it was really fast, you would get it in 24 hours.
That's right.
I mean, and then sometimes you have this, what do you call it? Double exposure.
Of course.
Right? Where I took a picture of my sister at her birthday, blowing out the candles, and then I have a picture of this bird. And the double exposure is the bird is like on her nose in the photo.
That's right.
And obviously that didn't happen, but this is the state of our minds. It is not double exposure. It is like multiple exposure. So we're not able to see things as they really are. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason we're clouded by all these impressions and stress. Okay, so now what to do? Well, with these very powerful breathing and meditation practices, we can clear the clouds, and more with time and practice, you can get an experience of that joy that abundant, infinite energy, love, peace, enthusiasm, creativity that is your nature. And it just takes a first step. Come and join us in the Part 1 Art of Living program. Or if you're not ready to invest in yourself yet, check out our YouTube channels or social media. Got a lot of techniques online, and it's a great start to start to put yourself in the driver's seat.
Sounds very interesting, Spencer. Like from what you're describing, a lot of people out there needs this, me included. We all go through things, and the courageous one is the ones that they declare, yes, I need it, and
wow, isn't it?
The people that they're not so courageous, they probably keep it hiding.
That's right.
And pretend things that didn't happen. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all suffering from the same thing.
That's right.
Some people have the declaration, some people don't. It's up to people how you take the initiative, I guess, and move forward in your life. One of the final question I have for you, if you don't mind, Spencer, is that, and I ask this question to everybody, okay? So it's not an unusual question. What do you know now that you would wish somebody have told you 20 years ago?
That's a great question.
Anything you would have changed today in your way, you exist, you behave, your business, etc. That perhaps if I would have known this 20 years ago, I would have done it completely different.
Yeah, I would say that I would just tell myself 20 years ago that it's okay to feel your emotions. Like, I used to be a very anxious person, and a very angry person. I mean, what a combination. My goodness. What a treat. But that was the reality for me. And I really thought that that is the way I am. I've just got to accept it. That's the way I am, and that's it. And of course, you don't want to feel like that. No one likes to feel like that. And I think to be able to go back and say, hey, Spence, you're a human being. You can give yourself a permission to feel that way. Who cares? Who do we have to perform for?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely correct.
In any case, no one is going to know what's going on in your own head. And there is a lot of power and strength and treasure actually waiting for you when you embrace those emotions and you be with them, sort of weather the storm. At one of our retreat centers, we have one in Quebec, which is where I live with my wife there. We have another one in Boone, North Carolina, and we have a pottery studio there. And when you make the pottery, do you when you're finished making the pottery on the wheel, what do you do with it? I don't know if you have any experience with that.
You have to take it off the wheel probably, right?
Yeah, you got to take it off the wheel. There you go. That's right. And then, if you leave it on the counter, it will dry, but it'll be very brittle and it'll break very easily. So what do? You put it in the kiln. And what is the temperature of the kiln? Is it a comfortable 23 degrees? No.
With the air conditioning on and off?
The air conditioning on and off at whim? No, absolutely not. It's 700 degrees in there. It is not remotely close to comfortable. So there is in the yogic tradition, it's the language of yoga and of meditation and breathing techniques is Sanskrit. And there's a Sanskrit word called titiksha, which is forbearance. And by being able to, be with those emotions, become aware of them, and forbear those emotions, what happens? They flip and your energy increases and you get connected with that joy, that love, that peace, that creativity that is your nature. But it will really only happen if we're able to have that patience. And as you said, very aptly, the courage to be able to do that. It's not an easy path, but you could say that however you think, the universe or the divine, whatever you believe, doesn't give easy jobs to capable people. And we are all one of those. So I would say if I had have known that, man, it would have saved me so much grief and struggle and pain that I wouldn't have had to go through. I'm grateful for that as well because it led me here on this path. But at the same time, hey, if you can avoid it and have a better result, please.
Why not?
Please do. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
You don't have to go through it. Why not? Hey, Spencer, I want to thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. Fun conversation. I didn't notice the time has gone by.
Me neither.
I could have talked to you for another couple of hours, but for the sake of time, I think we should stop it here. And you're welcome back to the channel anytime. I personally enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure our audience will have fun with this one as well. And Any final comments before we terminate the recording?
Well, I would say that, see how we're always running around taking care of everybody, taking care of people at work, taking care of people at home. And often one person gets left out.
Of course.
That's very important. That's right. That's a very important person. And take the time today, don't wait for tomorrow. Take the time today to do something for yourself, whatever that happens to be, whether it's some breath work and meditation, or whether that's to listen to your favorite song or do your workout you've been wanting to do. When you take that time for yourself, it will just show up in such positive ways in every other part of your life. And I would say we've got for all of us here in Canada, we're going to be awarded with the World Culture Festival happening next year in 2027 in GTA. We're going to celebrate it in Toronto. It's kind of the Olympics of culture. We're going to have one of the largest.
You were the MC at one of them, weren't you? You MC'd one of them before in India.
I was, and we got carried away in all our conversations. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to make everyone aware. We're going to be having curtain raisers across the country until fall of 2027. And it's going to be celebrated here right in Toronto. And yeah, we're really looking forward to celebrating cultures from all around the world and meditating with everybody.
Absolutely. And for the audience, if you need to get a hold of, if you think you want to get a hold of Spencer and you can't find him, you connect it to me. Please connect to me, let me know, and I will point you in the right direction. I'll connect you to Spencer Delisle as well. So what I'll do also, I will include as much links for your various websites, Spence, in my podcast, like when I publish things. Wonderful. And I will tag you on LinkedIn as well, so everything comes in all together. And I really had fun with this episode.
So did I, Robin. Yeah, thanks so much. You're such a great conversationalist, and really,
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Feel at ease, and I love your stories and anecdotes from your life as well. It was really enriching, and yeah, I'd like to personally invite you to come for one of our Art of Living Part 1 courses. I think you'd love it.
I would love that. Are you kidding? I'd love that. I'll be there.
Wonderful. Okay, let's stay in touch.
We'll stay in touch for sure. For the audience, thank you so much for listening in. If you're coming on YouTube, thanks for watching us. If you're coming on our audio channels, thanks for listening in. And if you're reading us on the blog post where we summarize all these conversations into a small, consumable 3-4 minute read on robinayoub.blog, thanks for reading and thanks for subscribing. I really appreciate your time with me for this particular episode, and I'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you at the next episode.